Still on the 10th National House of Assembly, there seems to be a crack between the APC concerning zoning. Good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we keep you updated with what is happening from our Nigerian newspaper. I am Sela Elisha, and of course, I have Rachel Thompson. Good morning, Rachel.
Morning, Sela.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Great. Thank you so much. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Do well to drop your comment on stories of interest to you this morning, and we'll be starting with the Nation newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Lagos government seals off 12 Banana Island houses. State failed to access 46 billion naira education funds. UBEC deplores inaction. You can find the details on page 6. Tinubu in Europe on investment drive. Dangote Lumelu raid NNPCL high in performance. You can read the details on page 26. Federal government explains signing big contracts at tail end of tenure. Why annual budgets fail to perform. Buhari seeks Senate nod for $800 million loan. You can start with the story on the front page and continue on page 4. Tribunal dismisses another party's petition against Tinubu and APC. The big story on the Nation newspaper, APC pledges revisit of zoning amid lawmakers' protest. Adamu parties aggrieved aspirants for speaker. More compliance trail recommendation on National Assembly leadership. Akeredolu calls for NEC intervention. You can find the details on page 4. At the downside of the paper, Oyetola urges Osun APC to accept Supreme Court verdict on Adeleke. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, the big story, Senate presidency, dissenting APC aspirants demand fresh zoning formula with the rider. APC zoning creating tension, cannot guarantee unity. Nzunaso warns. North Central Senators ride APC chairman, they cry zoning exclusion. Let us read the little detail of that story. Aspirants for the Senate presidency have rejected the adoption of a former minority Senate leader and ex-minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio, as the All Progressive Congress for the position of the President of Senate in the 10th National Assembly. The contestants faulted the party's position on the National Assembly leadership announced after a National Working Committee meeting last week and demand fresh zoning of the principal offices. Also, aggrieved aspirant for the position of the Speaker of House of Representatives on Wednesday stormed the APC headquarters in Abuja, where they demanded a fresh zoning formula. The National Working Committee has endorsed Akpabio for the South-South geopolitical zone as the President of the 3rd Senate, while Senator Baru Jibrin from the Northwest was picked as his deputy. Also in the House of Representatives, the APC endorsed Abbas for the Northwest as the Speaker and Benjamin Kadlu from the Southeast as deputy. And you can continue to read more detail of the story and see how the whole thing is unfolding. Still on the Punch newspaper, subsidy, Buhari seeks approval of $800 million palliative loan. You can find on page 19. Trouble looms over rising debt budget office wants. You can find also that on page 20. Ex-power minister arrested over alleged 22 billion naira fraud. You can find that also inside the paper. 4 men on trial for killing cousin. That's on the human angle. You can find that on page 26. Lagos arraigned Eze Indiebo for terrorism. And we have NNPCL needs huge investment to meet demand coming from Dangote. You can find more detail of that on page 11. And we have a picture story. You can do well to grab the Punch and read more detail of stories of interest to you.
On the Guardian newspaper, National Assembly leadership, more cracks as APC House divides against itself. You can find the details on page 6. Tinubu's overseas trip stirs reactions. Buhari seeks Senate's approval to spend $800 million palliative loan. More trouble for students as JAMB's biometric verification falters. Dangote Lumelu hails NNPC's performance on the carry. You can find the details on page 3. And we have a picture story where we can see Dangote himself and Lumelu. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, the big story, 18 days to Buhari's handover. Budget Office raises alarm over $800 million loan request, with the rider tell lawmakers about Nigerians' limited borrowing space. You can find that on page 3. And I think it's important that I give you a little detail of that story. Director General of the Budget Office, Ben Nkebuze, while addressing members-elect of the 10th National Assembly at their week-long induction ceremony in Abuja on Wednesday, pointed out that while Nigeria remains healthy with its debt-to-GDP ratio, the country is not with its debt-to-revenue ratio. Nkebuze was speaking to the newly elected and returning members of the National Assembly, which is responsible for the consideration, amendment, and passage of annual budget of the federal government, as well as the economic bills like the finance bill. He said, you may have heard that we have one of the lowest gross domestic product to debt ratios in the world. While the size of the federal government budget for 2023 created some excitement, the average budget of all the governments in the country amounted to about 30 trillion naira. That is less than 15% in the terms of ratio to GDP. And also, you can continue to read more detail of that story. But Rachel, you know, the story, when I saw it, I think I stumbled upon the story yesterday. And at a time where a lot is happening in the country, I think it was just last week, you and I were looking at the ways and means that
22.7 trillion
exactly
naira, yeah,
that the president asked the House of Assembly to approve
from the CBN.
And people were complaining just barely 20-something days
to go now.
And we're still having the $800 million that was given to us earlier, palliative, to actually reduce the pain for Nigeria in relation to fuel subsidy. We are having another fresh $800 million that the president is asking the Senate to actually approve, and it's still in relation to helping relieve pain, security, and all of that. And at the time where a lot is happening, 18 days, I remember some callers that called in when we had the about 22 trillion naira that they asked for the ways and means, was when some of our callers were actually saying, what is it that the outgoing administration, is demanding that money for? What is it they want to do that the incoming administration cannot do? And of course, we can just see, looking at what some of the concerns that are being raised, the Budget Office of Federation have said that we have actually reached our limited borrowing space.
Long ago, Celia, long ago, we've reached that limit, but I think we just keep, and that was why China is rejecting to give us loan, and we would see our lawmakers saying they are going for loan hunting and all of that. That's because it's not about today, Celia. We have exceeded our limit. When you have a loan, a debt profile of 46 trillion, thereabout. Now, that is before this 22.7 trillion ways and mean, because now this you are getting it from the CBN, and then now you want more from the World Bank. We have 800 million from the Office of the Finance Minister for palliative, and now we are having this 800 million. We're going there about 1.
Rachel, I want you to emphasize that it's $800 million, not naira.
$800 million, yes, and that's counting into billions in our naira and all of that. Sele, the truth is, this is one of the problems we have in Nigeria, and I keep saying it until we have government, until we have an administration that is willing to do the job that is expected in Nigeria, we're not going to grow. I am yet to actually see what will bring growth to this country. I'm yet to see a bill that will bring growth to this country. We're seeing this governors and lawmakers asking for a rise in their pay and all of that, and this is all on borrowed funds. I will keep emphasizing on the fact that these are all on borrowed funds. We are living a lavish lifestyle on borrowed fundings, because now this is a palliative. This is not an investment on an industry. This is not an investment in the agricultural sector. This is not an investment on the power sector. This is not an investment on our, no, this is money to be shared. If I understand this palliative that we've been asking from the World Bank, these are money for us to spend, to eat with our mouth. It's literally not an investment that will generate revenue. This is just money to be able to help with our lifestyle and all of that. And until we stop borrowing this type of funds, until we stop having this kind of money adding to our debt profile, Sele, we are not going to grow, because some of this debt we are going to pay them in 25 years. That's at barely 3 administrations later, because if we have the next administration doing 8 years, the next doing 8 years, that's still 16 years, and that's 3 administration on the run, and we don't know the kinds of loans that the incoming administration are going to generate for the country yet. We've seen that our debt just from China has gone over 200%. Within just from 2015 to 2023 has gone over to just China alone, and we're not talking about from the World Bank and other countries that have given us loans, just China alone. So this is a speechless, very speechless situation,
because it seems as if at a point we begin, if you listen attentively or clearly to what coming from the looking at the budget office of the Federation and telling us the fact that we have reached our limit. In fact, they are also telling us that we should not categorize ourselves as an oil-producing economy, that we are an upcoming oil-producing economy. Because if you're going to mention countries that are producing oil, we should be talking about the likes of Saudi Arabia. We should be talking about the likes of, other countries that produce about 34 million or millions of barrels, pump about 10 million barrels of crude oil per day. We have other countries that produce about 3 million barrels of oil per day, and we are struggling with 1.9 million barrels of oil per day. So we should just call ourselves an upcoming. And if you look at it, you see the ratio of our debt to our revenue. You cannot equate the two. We saw recently on our paper where they said we spend about 96% of our revenue to pay our debt. So automatically we don't even have anything in the country. So everything we use, talking about salaries to pay workers, talking about almost virtually anything we do, we are borrowing to do that. And we really have to sit back. Richard, I remember it's like almost every day when we come to the dailies, we talk about this. Each time we sit and say, why are we folding our arms and keep talking about oil? I think it was just yesterday or so, Richard, we were talking about the fact that these oil wells will soon dry up someday. I'm not praying for it to dry up, because we are beginning to see that we are finding oil in Bauchi, Gombe. We have the north are beginning. But then what now happens when we keep, thinking about just oil? We talked about we have natural resources. There's rubber, we have cash crops. Why don't we, move into those sectors and see that we create something? Let's talk about having finished goods. Send it outside the country to other countries, and generate something. Rather than, okay, just calculate $800 million plus another $800 million plus about 22.7 trillion naira from the CBN, which we are not even supposed to borrow such a huge amount, because that is supposed to be like an emergency fund when we don't have anywhere else to go. And you're just supposed to borrow just 5%, but we have borrowed over 200%. So a lot of things is happening, and if really we do not want to be bankrupt as a country, we have to really already, if the way things are looking, we already are, but we have to be humble. We have to cut down our spendings, our budget as a country. And we spoke about the fact that let's look inwardly. What are those things we can slash down? What are some unnecessary allowances? If our leaders really mean well for this country, then let us see slash. We've heard government of other countries doing it, and I'm not saying that is the best way, but if we really want to grow as a nation, let's look at what are we spending unnecessarily on. where can we cut down certain expenses. Yes, Rachel.
We know, Sele. It's just left for our government to do the job. We know exactly where we're spending our money that we're not supposed to do it. We know every economy knows what an investment is, what the rightful investment that should be made. I don't know how to put it, but then there is no way, I keep saying it, there is no way the Nigerian government will tell me that they don't know where we are getting it wrong. It's about doing the job rightly, Sele. Like when you're talking about agriculture, it will shock you, Sele, that there are countries that boosted their economy with just one cash crop. And Sele, we have more than 10 cash crops. There was one time Cuba boosted its economy with just sugarcane. We have countries like Ukraine that because of the war, the availability of wheat affected us. This is just one cash crop, and we can see how one country becomes the major supplier or distributor of such crops to many other countries, that when that country is affected, other countries with just few crops, a lot of countries are thriving. You sit down and look at Nigeria and we don't have one cash crop. We have more than 5. We have a lot, Sele. Yeah. Tell me, if we will just sit down and make these crops what they truly are, I don't think we'll be here complaining, because there are countries that don't have this much cash crop. With one, they're able to make a difference in their economy, and talk more of us that have more. Sele, we know what is needed to be done. I keep saying it. It's just when we can relate it to everything, when it comes to our military, when it comes to our education sector, and we know exactly what needs to be done. We're looking forward to that government that is willing and ready to restructure the system that will work and make Nigeria move.
Of course, let's look at other stories on the Nigerian News Direct. 22 billion naira EFCC arrests former power minister over alleged fraud. You can find that on page 3. Still on Nigerian News Direct, we have Seplat Energy shareholders loaned $204.4 million 2022 FY profits. Court affirms NCDMB's mandate to collect 1% NCDF. Other stories on invalid license. NMDPRA seals 75 filling station, gives May 31st deadline for compliance. And on Senate presidency, I am in the race to win. Rebrand National Assembly for a new Nigeria, coming from Osate. You can read more on page 4. Abiodun inaugurates 150 million standard cubic feet natural gas facility in Ogun State. NDDC to partner with UN agency on flood control in Niger Delta. You can find that on page 13. We can see the picture story down here showing Governor Abiodun during the inauguration, and also upside we can see the Ogun State Deputy Governor amidst other stakeholders. There we can see the former president also in that picture, Olusegun Obasanjo. So you can do well, grab the Nigerian News Direct and read more stories of interest to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, angry reactions as Buhari writes Senate seeks approval to borrow $800 million from World Bank. National Assembly leadership, APC hints of review as rejection greets zoning arrangement. We will look at it again, says Adamu, party chair. Zoning formula reinforces injustice, inequity. This is coming from Akeredolu. It's rape of democracy, coming from the CSOs. We won't respect arrangement. This is coming from the speakership and G7. You can find the details on page 6. NGA rejoices as court bars NBC from imposing fines on broadcast stations. Tinubu travels to Europe to meet investors, fine-tune transition plans. Osibajo in Umo to flag off Aguta Lake Orashi River dredging project today. Financial infrastructure. Senate indicts NAFDAC, NECO, 45 others, and MDAs. You can find the details on page 27. While we are still awarding multi-billion naira contracts coming from the federal government. Insecurity, poverty getting worse in Nigeria, statement coming from a bishop. You can find the details, or which bishop said that in particular, on page 27. Labour Party will be back Atiku on live broadcast of tribunal proceedings. Court adjourns hearing of his petition as APP withdraws petition. Panic as seated home and forces burn vehicles in Anambra. We have a picture story. Dangote Lumelu hailed NNPC's performance on the Kiari. You can find the details on page 25. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, the 10 National Assembly leadership, senators-elect, reps-elect move for open contests. With the right, the G7 aspirants who opposition members select. You betrayed us, aggrieved aspirants tell Adamu and the National Working Committee. Give us time to address your grievances, APC tell Wasi, Bitari and others. APC zoning formula unworkable, reinforces injustice coming from Akeredolu, urges the National Working Committee to convene NEC meeting. APC zoning templates a Lagos affair coming from aggrieved aspirants. I'm reaching out to other aspirants coming from Abbas and their Bajabi Amila Joint Tax Group, APC loyalists. You can find all of that story on page 5. Other story here, we have foreign investors scale down holdings in Nigerian stocks by 58%. That's from the business angle. You can read more of that. UK court permits Kanu to appeal judgment in favor of the FCDO. You can find more of that story on page 11. How bandits try to cripple northern states' economy, coming from Governor El-Rufai. We hope to hear him say more about Kaduna State as well. NGE hails court for stopping NBC from fining broadcast stations. Buhari writes Senate seek approval of $800 million loan. You can find that on page 8. And on 22 billion naira fraud, EFCC arrests ex-Power Minister Saleh Mamman. You can find on page 8 as well. Headers killed 3 Benue community volunteer guards and 3 others. We also hope to hear what the government of Benue is doing about the killings too. Excuse me. And on presidential poll, court adjourned Obi's petition against Tinubu till May 17th. You can find that on page 9. Dangote Elumelu hails NNPCL performance under Kiari. You can find on page 27. BVN has no expiring date coming from the CBN. I think we heard that it can be renewed after 10 years. But CBN here is saying it has no expiring date. So that's a clarification coming from them. You can read more of that on page 8. We have a column from Olufasan and also Eaglets for the World Cup ticket against Burkina Faso. You can find that also on page 30. We have the picture story there too. You can grab the Vanguard and read more detail of stories that are of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, again Tinubu travels out. It says he is to meet with investors. Buhari writes Senate requests $800 million World Bank loan. Nigeria has limited borrowing space coming from the budget office. Akeredolu adds more fuel to raging zoning fire. Says proposed leadership position skewed arrangement reinforce injustice. Aggrieves speakership aspirants ask NWC to reverse decision on Abbas and Kalu. We can't guarantee our loyalty at detriment of justice, peace, and fairness coming from Gagdi. Don't impose hand-picked principal officers on lawmakers, Northern Coalition tells APC. Kalu Yari seal deal. I won't step down coming from Izunaso. You can find the details on pages 2, 3, and 5. Ometokun arrests 4 over alleged murder of header in Ogun. NEMA issues flood alert, says Ekiti on danger list. EFCC arrests Saleh Mamman, ex-power minister. You can find the details on page 8. Abiodun inaugurates 150 million standard cubic feet natural gas facility in Ogun. Presidential election, court dismisses APP's petition against Tinubu. Labour Party Obi back Atiku, PDP's request for live broadcast of proceedings. Court restrains NBC from imposing fines on broadcast stations. Editors vindicated, says NGE. You can find the details on page 16. We have a picture story. Osun workers give Adeleke rousing reception, celebrate Supreme Court judgment. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
And on this day, newspaper coming from Dangote, NNPC has become African Saudi Aramco with right decisions. The writer says firm must strike balance between local content and efficiency. Africa's richest man, Elumelu, hail NNPC performance under Kyari. UBA chair discloses production in its facility now 96%. NOC to deliver value for Nigerians in 3 years. Kyari pledges. You can find detail on the front page and on page 14. Tinubu departs Nigeria for Europe on working visit. You can find more also on page 35. Respite at scored bars MPN. I take that story. Respite at scored bars NBC from imposing fines on broadcast station. Notifies 2019 5 million naira fine on the 45 stations. The big story still coming from Akere Dodu. APC zoning of National Assembly leadership still unjust, targeted against some zones and individuals, with the writer aspirant threatening 2015 scenario may come into play. We are betrayed, zoning formula won't stand, Wase insists. Attempt to force leadership will be resisting, northern groups warn. We are making effort to pacify aggrieved contestant, Abbas hints. You can find that on the front page and more on page 14. We have two picture stories. The first, which we've been seeing on most of our papers, where we can see Dangote and also Edume, and then we can also see special recognition award. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of what this award is about. But before we move further, Rachel, I think it's right that we take a break at this moment, so we can engage our viewers and also our supporters and callers, so we can hear what their inputs are concerning the story. Remember, we still have a little friction in the APC concerning the 10th House Assembly zoning formula. We also saw that the president is actually asking the Senate to approve a fresh $800 million loan, which he tagged as being for security palliatives for Nigerians. So we would love to hear what your inputs are concerning the story when we come back from the break. Please do not go and rest. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at various stories that have been making the lead on our papers. We've seen that the president is asking the National Assembly for a fresh $800 million loan from the World Bank for palliative, and we've seen that there seems to be a friction in the APC concerning the zoning formula. We've also seen so many reports also on the paper where we are having, the NNPC looking like the Saudi Arabia, Aramco, and other stories on the paper. So we'd love to hear what your inputs are about the stories. Our numbers are displayed on your screen at this moment. You can do well to call us. Please do remember, as usual, turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us and be very audible enough so we could also hear you, and then move away just in case you would love to call us so that other callers or other viewers. All right. Hello, good morning.
Yeah. Shaman calling from Kaduna.
All right, Shamal, 2 days. Welcome to have you back.
Yeah,
good morning.
And Murache, good morning. How
Good
are
morning.
you today?
Shamal, go on, please.
Yes, my sister. Honestly, NEPA has been denying us the privilege of following the programs in EPA TV.
Okay.
Life Wahala in Nigeria. know all that is happening in this country. The debt toll of this country is getting too unbearable. I don't know when this money will be paid back to the World Bank. Since 2015, when Mr. PMB came on board, he has been in the tune of borrowing, and cannot assess what this money is being spent for. You cannot see infrastructure on ground. People are left in abject poverty. People are suffering, but yet we are borrowing. Imagine $800 million to be borrowed to share to families that we have never had. Even in my community, even in my local government, I've never had anybody telling me that he has collected 5,000 naira from federal government. Who are they giving this money, or who are they paying this money to? Let's be sincere to ourselves. I pray that we'll get it right in this country by getting leadership that will have the people at heart. The government of APC and Mr. PNB have derailed, to my opinion. I pray that the next government, the next dispensation will get it right so that the country will be rescued from the predicament we are passing through. Good morning, my sister.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Shamana. We just hope, just like we always say, we just hope that for anybody that have actually gotten their palliative, should please call us so that we can actually appreciate the government for work done, well done, of course. Let's take a look at the next paper, Rachel, which is the Leadership.
On the Leadership newspaper, we can find broadcast station cartels NBC. Politicians hijacked water resources bill. This is coming from the federal government. IMF warns Nigeria against more foreign loans. 707 trillion. We have 77 trillion naira debt, and you can see that the IMF is warning Nigerians. And I don't think we need warning from international bodies for us to know that we are going overboard with what we are collecting from people outside and even within the country. And I just hope that the government does something about this.
All right, I think we have a call. Hello, good morning. What's the name? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Good morning, sir. What's your name? Where are you calling us
I'm calling
from?
Benin. My name is Joseph.
All right, Joseph, go on, please.
I'm calling for, okay, yeah. Yeah. The reason why I'm calling is as regard to the money that Buhari wants to borrow. I believe the reason why all this is happening is because he believes that APC leadership is continuous, in as far as Tinubu has won and is coming back. Because if not that, assuming it's PDP or Labour Party that is coming up, I don't think it will go as far as to start taking
Excuse me.
How many days does he have left to leave that place? And now you are coming out to borrow. Borrow on what? On who? For what? So the thing is, I don't really know. I don't really understand what this is that take us for. Azana, for how long are all these debts going to be paid? Azana. So I just know that one day, one thing I know is that death will take each and every one of us out of the profit of this head, and everybody will pay for whatever they are doing to Nigerians. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joseph.
Yeah.
Let's go on, please, Rachel.
Still on the Leadership newspaper, insecurity worsening in Northwest. This is coming from the DSS and El Rufai. Tinubu in secret talks with opposition members elect. Don't expect us to be loyal if zoning formula stands. This is coming from Gagdi. Expect repeat of 2015 Wasi Betera 1. I won't quit race for Senate President coming from Izunaso. Allow transparent process, says Joel Onowakpo. And you can read the details on page 4. Our fleets can't cover Nigerian waters. This is coming from the Navy. You can find the details on page 6. And at this point, I would like to say, if your fleet can't cover the Nigerian water, then you get more fleet. Why do we keep coming up with excuses, Sele? And I don't know the word to use, but this is a very flimsy excuse for you to come and say your fleet can't cover the Nigerian water. Then get more fleet, Sele, because I feel that this is an excuse that shouldn't even be an excuse in the first place. This is important. We are having oil theft. We cannot meet our daily quota by the OPEC. We are struggling as an oil producing country. And we know that it's important for our waters to be secured, for us to know what is happening. And you come and you're telling us that our fleet can cover the Nigerian water. And we know the solution is to get more fleet. If you need more funding, tell the federal government you need more funding. But this shouldn't be an excuse in the first place. I'm looking forward to where we wouldn't have this kind of excuses coming from people in position to work. You can find the details on page 6. Dangote Adetola Esul Nupe for Zainab Marwa's book launch. Nigeria loses legal battle against Shell. You can find the details on page 34. We have a picture story where we can see all those aspiring for the positions of speakers and deputy speakers for the House of Representatives and Senate. We have a caller on the line.
Contribution on the paper review.
All right, so please, what's your name?
Lagos. I'm calling from Lagos.
All right,
So,
I'll call it. Go on, please.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
I want to react to the newspaper headline on the $800 million.
Okay, go on,
Which Mr.
please.
President is about obtaining from
All right.
external creditors.
Mm.
To my view, I think the president should be busy now with the handover note rather than trying to create new activities. We have lost confidence in the administration. The COVID palliative was an issue. Up to today, nobody knows how many families got it. I also remember that at a point, my company applied during that COVID. I had a staff strength of 8, and they said they were going to support to cushion the effect. Everything was processed. Telephone calls were made to me and to my staff to confirm the application. Up to today, the money was not remitted to us. So who pocketed it? Nobody knows. And he is trying to take 800 million at this dying minute. My advice is that you please concentrate on handover note and allow Nigeria to have some peace. Also, on the visit of Mr. Tinubu to negotiate with investors, I think he's trying to predetermine the outcome of the tribunal. He has not been given the mandate fully yet. So why is he going to travel to begin negotiating to obtain some investment alliances with creditors or whatever? So he should please allow the committee, the panel, to decide the case before embarking on this frivolous journeys. And also, finally, on the House Committee leadership, I think the opposition party that are in majority should be on the drawing board now. Since APC does not want to learn lessons, we are tired of their leadership. That is my submission. Good morning.
Thank you so much for
very
those,
Yes,
summary of the stories. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Independent newspaper. Obi Labour Party back Atiku plead for live broadcast of the PEPC sittings, with tribunal fixes fresh date to hear the Labour Party petition. NGE loan court for stopping the NBC imposition of fines on broadcast stations. The big story on the 10th reps principal officers tussle. Wasi aspirant ranking reps reject the APC endorsements. Accuses Bajabiamila of misleading Tinubu. Won the party over repeat of Saraki's Tambuwal coup. Akere Dodu condemns the party National Assembly leadership zoning formula with detail on page 29. Senate indicts AGF, NAFDAC 45 MDAs for financial infractions. Buhari seeks Senate approval to borrow $800 million. Nigeria, 59 others at risk of missing maternal newborn SDGs targets with detail on page 7. Don't interfere in Bayelsa governorship poll, Diri wants the army. Tinubu heads for Europe, 18 days to May 29 inauguration day. And we have another story that says why we are still awarding contracts, dates to government exit coming from the federal government. OK's 129.8 billion naira for further work on Ogini cleanup water scheme. And downside, we have the PEPC dismisses petition against Tinubu, APC, and others. You can find more detail of that particular story on page 6, and that's all on the Daily Independent newspaper.
On New Telegraph, federal government moves renewed crackdown on tax defaulters. This is on Amnesty. Oil spill, Nigerians lose against Shell at UK Supreme Court. Maritime security, Buhari procured 20 ships for Navy. President-elect leaves for Europe to fine-tune transition plans without distractions. EFCC arrests ex-power minister Saleh over alleged 22 billion naira fraud. And on Biafra, UK appeal court to hear Kanu's case. 18 days to hand over Buhari seeks Senate approval for additional $800 million loan to fund 5,000 naira monthly transfer to 10.2 million vulnerable Nigerians for 6 months as Budget Office decries nation's rising debt. Contrary to belief, Nigeria, not oil-rich economy coming from Akabaze, says country doesn't operate organic budget, has lowest GDP to debt ratio globally. You can find the details on page 2. Court stops NBC from imposing fine on broadcast station. Obi distance self supporters from attacks on Adeboye, says opposition orchestrating rules against him, and you can find the details on page 5. Why federal government keeps approving contracts few weeks to hand over coming from ministers. Federal government approves 322.27 billion naira for Ogoni FCT Transportation Ministries. Okeredulo faults APC zoning formula, says it will promote injustice. You can find the details on page 3, 5, and 8. Tribunal dismisses APC's petition against Tinubu's victory. At the downside of the paper, we have a study that says women should start breast cancer screening at 40, and I believe that they should start earlier because we have younger women facing this also. It's rare though, but the fact that it is there, then we should start it earlier before 40. I think because when you know that you do have it in your family, you should start it earlier because cancer is all about early detection. That's depending on the stages. If you find it in stage 1, you can conquer it and move on. So it's all about finding it early and then tackling it. So don't wait till it's 40. Make it a routine even when you're way younger than that. The details can be found on page 8, and that's all the news on New Telegraph.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. We still detain House of Assembly leadership. Wasi Bitira Jaja take protest to APC Secretariat and says zoning won't stand. Brace for Senate President. We will do the needful. Party Chair Adamu assures. You can find all of that on page 7. Nigeria in trouble, exceeding borrowing limits coming from the Budget Office. We are pushing toward 100% in debt service ratio. Buhari seeks fresh $800 million loan for 10.2 million households at 5,000 naira each. And I keep wondering, when are we going to teach Nigerians how to fish rather than giving them the fish? You can read detail on page 6. PEPT adjourns will be petition against Tinubu to May 17th. Downside, we still have court bars NBC for imposing fine on broadcast station. And coming from Kwara, court remands medical director for raping a nurse. We're beginning to have some of these things happening. It's a serious crime. You can find detail of that human angle story on page 9. Coming from Saudi, JAM to integrate student evacuees into Nigeria varsities. You can find detail on page 15. CBN vows to penalize shipping lines over undocumented export. You can find that on page 23. We have a picture story. You can do well to grab the Blueprint, read more detail of stories of interest to you.
On daily assets, federal government approves 107 billion naira for Ogoni remediation, 3.4 billion naira Abuja Airport consultancy fee. The big story, Presidential Election Tribunal Obi demands live television coverage. Tribunal hears Labour Party petition May 17. APP withdraws petition against Tinubu. Tinubu departs Nigeria to engage European investors and others. Buhari to induct new warships, other naval platform May 22nd. Commission reviews minimum standard for senior secondary education. We have 2,446 $446 awaiting trial inmates stretching custodial centers and facilities. I'll take that story again. The number is 52,446 awaiting trial inmates stretching custodial centers and facilities. This is a report coming from the NCO, and you can find the details on page 5. And on fuel subsidy, Buhari seeks Senate approval for $800 million World Bank loan. World Bank extends NG Cares program by 1 year. At the downside of the paper, Dino VC's Atai Gala promises constitutional rules for royal fathers. The details can be found on page 5. And that's all the news on Daily Asset.
Let's take a look at the reports coming from the Sweet Crew. Why $2.5 billion AKK pipeline project cost seems inflated, coming from Kiari. Take that story. Why $2.5 billion AKK gas pipeline project cost seems inflated. We also have uncertainty over first subsidy removal with the rider outgoing government contract debug self, and also Labour still opposed to policy. You can find that story on the front page and continue more inside. Still, we have from the oil sector, Nigerian oil industry sees 94% decline in foreign capital inflow. And from the gas, we have Nigerian gas output declines to 6.72% to 149.26 BSCF in 1 month. And on finance, House of Rep probes that was CPR over labor practices. You can find that on page 24. We have picture story. You can do grab the Sweet Crew report, read more stories on the oil and gas industry, and that's all on the Sweet Crew.
On the Matrix newspaper, Peter Obi condemns social media attackers on Pastor Adeboye. Akeredolu rejects zoning formula endorsed by Tinubu. Wigwe succeeds Rabiu as president of France-Nigeria Business Council. Napoli open contract talk with Osimhen. Bank demands tax clearance certificate on FX transactions. You can find the details on page 4. Still on 10th National Assembly leadership, APC in disarray, zoning an unworkable arrangement that reinforces injustice and enhances insecurity. This is coming from Akeredolu. APC urged to retract earlier decision to ensure fairness and equity and justice for a smooth 10th Senate North Central caucus. Wasi others reject Abba's stage protest at the APC headquarters. Ayatollah congratulates Adeleke on victory at Supreme Court. Ahead of inauguration, Tinubu's jet out to Europe on working visits. JAM to integrate evacuated students into Nigerian university. This is on the Sudan war returnees. At the downside of the paper, EFCC arrests ex-power minister Saleh Maman for alleged 22 billion naira fraud. You can find the details inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Business Day newspaper, Nigeria's Infra Corp in limbo as CBN delays seed funding. We have also Nigerians' debt burden echoes danger of rubber stamp lawmakers. You can find more on the front page and on page 29. We have Buhari regains on jobs promises as unemployment quadruples. You can find more of that too on page 31. Tribunal rules on Atiku live broadcast motion today. 19 days to swearing in Tinubu jets out to Europe. You can find more of that. And that's all on the Business Day.
On Punch Sport Extra, Osimhen Haaland same. This is a rating coming from Capello. You can find the detail on page 6 and 7. Fans fume over reported Igalo sale for Messi. As usual, Al-Hala is offering a huge £435 million a year deal for Messi. We have on Champions League, we have Milan 0 and Inter Milan 2. We have Nerazzurri beat Naples Rossoneri, and you can find the details inside the paper. Grealish hails the burner after Madrid goal. Nigeria versus Burkina Faso, we have glory chasers. Eaglet battle young Etalons for World Cup spot. Upade confident of qualification. United plan club record beat for Ramos. Barca confirmed Busquets summer exit. Blues over Aubameyang, Cucurella for Felix. And at the downside of the paper, Fed Cup 3SC Aqua Ayumba crash. Madrid have nothing to fear at Etihad. And that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you to our callers this morning. Thank you to our viewers, our supporters. Thank you to the crew members and everybody that makes sure that this program was a success. Until we come your way again tomorrow, though, have a great day ahead.